So you just bought a Daniel H9 or you're looking to pick one up. Today we're gonna be going over our 100 round initial impressions, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and later we're gonna compare it to the original Hudson H9. Starting with what you get a standard plastic box from Daniel Defense. In the box, you're going to get your standard lock, you're going to get a nice Daniel H9 manual, and you're going to get a free optic plate. I went ahead and got on their website and filled this out. They said it could take up to 60 days, which kind of sucks. I prefer shooting with an optic. Inside, you're going to see your gun positioned in nicely cut foam and an additional 2 magazines. That makes 3 overall, which is really nice. A lot of striker-fired handguns don't do that anymore. With that out of the way, we're going to go over the H9 top to bottom, talk about the things I like, the things I don't like. Starting off with the sights, we have a U-notch rear sight with serrations, and it is blacked out, which is really nice. And then a high-vis front sight. I've said before, I don't really care for these sights. However, it was kind of nice shooting with it since I could not run an optic. It made it pretty easy to see, especially in bright daylight. Typically, I don't like the look of these. However, Daniel Defense did a nice job with this. This one looks pretty good. It's very low profile, it's not super tall, it's not suppressor height sights, so I can appreciate that. It does come optic cut. As I said earlier, I have a plate coming for an RMR. It's not gonna be here yet. I don't know actually when it will ship. I think this is an absolute must for all modern handguns. Even if you're not gonna use it, I think it should be an option that it is cut for an optic. That way, if you grow into optics, you don't have to pay money to get your slide milled. The slide serrations on here are pretty nice. They are different than the original Hudson. Standard slide serrations like a Glock or a SIG. They are functional, they work pretty good. Both forward and rear are the exact same thing. And from here on out, everything gets kind of weird. This is kind of like Glock in a 1911 had a baby. So one thing you're gonna notice is this rail section is lower than a standard striker-fired handgun. The reason they did that is to reduce the entire bore axis and the recoil assembly down to reduce felt recoil. I will say that it does feel softer than some handguns. It is an aluminum frame, so that is going to help with the weight. The only downside of this is it's kind of hard to put a weapon light on here. We played with a TLR1, a Holosun PID, and a Streamlight TLR7 sub. I wasn't a fan of really any of them. The TLR7 sub was very close. However, when I was holding the gun, I kept activating the switches, which is really annoying. So I just took it off. This is probably one of the few guns that I would just run a handheld light. I don't prefer to do that. I prefer it on the gun, but it would justify me breaking my own rules and not putting a weapon light on here. It just hangs down really far and it kind of gets in the way when you're firing the handgun. One thing to note is the rail is gonna be a lot higher than the original Hudson. It looks like it's about 3/8 of an inch. The original Hudson, you just could not throw a weapon light on there. It would look really dorky. It would get in the way. This is really close. I would say I wish it was a little bit higher to just get a little bit more room out of it. We might throw a Surefire XC1 on this. That is a very short light to see if we can get away with throwing a light on this. That light's not great, but it would still be better, in my opinion, than nothing. With that being said, you could tell Daniel Defense tried to retain the look on this. I wish they would have stayed with this. This looks very cool. It's very cyberpunkish. It's very different, and I think it ultimately made the handgun shoot softer. So I kind of wish Daniel Defense would have committed with that and made this smaller. I see why they didn't, because people like me prefer running a weapon light, but you're kind of all in or nothing on that, and I wish they would have just stayed with this, ultimately, because I would have gotten less recoil. Just kind of food for thought. It still looks pretty cool. It definitely looks different than a standard striker-fired handgun, but not as cool as the original Hudson. One thing to note is this is our shop manager's handgun. It is going to be a little bit customized with engraving and grips, but it's incredibly close to the original form of the Hudson H9. One thing I find really interesting is they chose to do a Glock style takedown lever. It doesn't get in the way of anything. It looks different than a Glock. It actually kind of looks cooler, but they did opt for that. The trigger is very nice. It's better than most striker-fired handguns I have shot. Not as good as the original. It's a little bit heavier, but I'll be interested to see if this breaks in with time and gets lighter, kind of like a Glock trigger does. All in all, I like this trigger a lot. It's very comfortable. The reset's not quite as positive, but the take up and break is phenomenal for a striker-fired handgun. It's almost like a 1911, like there's almost no take up. Break is very solid, tactile, and then the reset is short and does have a little bit of tactile feel to it. Definitely could be a little more positive. With all that being said, I think this is a phenomenal trigger. The slide lock, slide release lever is in the right spot. It's bumped out enough that I can actually catch it. It doesn't feel recessed. It's very natural to hit the lever. I did a lot of reloads with this. I failed to get slide lock like 1 or 2 times, but I was able to hit the lever really easily. I like it a lot. Seems to be the appropriate size for a duty gun or a carry gun. The mag release is very positive. One thing to note is we were able to get it to fail. It didn't want to come out, like it kind of right there, the button's to compress, but it's locked in until I touch it. That only really seemed to be an issue in the shop. when we were out on the range. Like I said, I did a lot of reloads. Never happened once out in the range. And honestly, I'm having a hard time getting to recreate it after about 100 rounds. So maybe the issue works itself out. One thing that could get worse or could get better. So we'll keep an eye on it and we'll definitely update it when we get more rounds on this. One thing that is really cool is they opted to keep the removable panels like the original Hudson. These appear to be G10, and I'm sure there's going to be aftermarket support for it soon. So you'll be able to change that out. The grip texture on these are very nice. I like the checkering. It's very comfortable in the hand. It's not too aggressive that I wouldn't carry this, but it's aggressive enough it definitely makes a difference. It kind of reminds me of the PDP feel. It's kind of at the perfect level of grip texture and smoothness, so it's not gonna hurt your skin, but it's actually gonna make a difference when you're shooting. Talking about ergonomics, this gun feels great. I love the original Hudson ergonomics, and the Daniels is very similar. I like it a lot. The only hot spot I've noticed is right here for me, since I'm a right-handed shooter. Right on the right side of my thumb on the inside, it's actually a red mark from shooting today. There's a little bit of a hot spot when I grip it, or with how low this bore axis is. It's not annoying enough that I hate shooting it. They could have scalloped some more material out of this aluminum frame and probably gotten that down a little bit more, but it's not that bad. The ergos are great. I believe this is a 1911 grip angle. It has a very natural point of aim. Again, I still like these ergonomics just like I like the original Hudson. One thing to note is this is a 15 round handgun, not a 17 round like the original Hudson, which for me is fine because I'm currently carrying a CZ-P01 and this will honestly probably replace it. So 15 rounds is good enough for carry. I can carry a spare mag. However, I'm glad it at least has 15 rounds. One thing they also did is there is a removable backstrap. I'm not wondering if they're gonna come out with some different sizes or styles of this. Keep in mind in the future, you may be able to change this out and make the grip longer or bigger for you. One thing to note about holsters for the H9 is I've seen QVO Tactical actually released one that is not light bearing. So if you're looking for a holster, go check that out. Past that, there's not too many options out there yet, but I'm sure there will be. I'm sure T-Rex Arms and Tier 1 Concealed are also working on holsters. So how does the H9 feel when you're shooting it? Well, it definitely has less recoil than a standard striker-fired gun like a 320 or a Glock. It kind of reminds me of a comped 320, except not quite as soft. It still has some recoil to it. What it's got going for it is that low bore axis, that low recoil assembly, and the aluminum frame. However, it is snappier than the original Hudson. This gun's a brick, especially the steel framed version. With that recoil assembly being additionally lower, this gun just shoots a lot softer. And to me, it feels quite a bit heavier. But for the new H9, it's kind of in the sweet spot. New shooters will appreciate the deadened recoil. Experienced shooters will definitely appreciate it as well. A low recoiling 9mm is always fun to have. I will say it was still snappier than the original. So we did not have any malfunctions with the handgun. However, we only have 100 rounds on it. We're going to do more thorough testing on this, shoot a lot more rounds to this. So keep an eye out for a video in the future with more rounds on the gun to see if there are any reliability issues. But everything I've seen on the internet, everyone seems to be liking their handgun, and there has not been too many issues. So what category does the H9 fall into? I'm gonna say it's kind of a duty carry gun. It doesn't quite have all the standards for a competition gun. The softer recoiling is nice. However, the mags are stuck at 15 rounds. Nobody makes an extended mag yet. So it's kind of on the small side. For me, it's like the perfect carry length. It's also not a bad weight. It's very comparable to my P01, so I would definitely carry this. I wish this rail was either all the way up so that I could put a light on it, as I prefer a weapon light for carry, or all the way down to maximize that recoil. So it's kind of in the middle of all these niches, but it's just a really cool handgun. I'm gonna carry it. I'll probably let you guys know in the full review if it's a good carry option or if it's too heavy, if I prefer my CZ-P01 or one of my mini comped handguns. If you like the way this gun looks and the way it feels, and you're not too worried about carrying a weapon light, it's probably gonna be a great option for you. It's definitely different enough from all the other handguns on the market to make it interesting and to make it something that's really cool to add to your arsenal. It's light enough with the aluminum frame, you could definitely carry this. So there's definitely gonna be a select group of people that really like this handgun and a select group of people that are just not interested. It's definitely gonna come at a cost. This gun comes in around $1,300, so it's substantially more than most carry guns on the market, but it's a lot different too. Not too many guns have this low of a bore axis with a 1911 grip angle and an aluminum frame. So if that's your style, I think this is probably one of the better buys. There's some things I wish they would have done different, but ultimately I can't complain too much because it's back on the market. It's nice to see something that's not just a high bore axis polymer striker fired handgun, and to revive one of my favorite guns from a couple years ago. So what do you guys think? Should Herrington Arms make some products for the Daniel Defense H9? If you like this video, YouTube thinks you might like this one. We'd appreciate a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.